These are oil pastels. And don't let appearances fool you, because oil pastels are not the crayons of your childhood. Crayons are made with powdered pigment, and wax is the binder and that holds it together. Oil pastels also start with a powdered pigment, but the binder is an oil. So these go on heavier, more opaque. That means you can't see through it as much as you would a crayon, and they're very smooth and blend easily. When working with oil pastels, it's a good idea to protect your work surface, because oil requires soap to clean up, and it's easier just to keep your space clean in the first place than it is to try to scrub it all off. Not to mention the pigment can be concentrated enough that it could be hard to get off. So I'm setting up my workspace here. I also like to work on a neutral colored paper, but there's nothing wrong with white. In fact, if you want to see here, so I did these little experiments on white paper, right? But for this demo, I'm going to use the neutral colored paper. Neutral meaning grays, brown, technically white is a neutral, okay? So oil pastels work very much like we learned when we did color pencil, and that is layer, layer, layer. That's right, say it 3 times with me. Layer, layer, layer. And the 3 times is important because this is the process. The first layer is your main color. The next layer are your darks and lights. And your final layer is back to the original color to blend everything together. So let me show you how this works out. I am going to use purple because it's my favorite. So purple is going to be my color. Now I'm going to determine my darks and lights. Well, I know that black and white is a real obvious way to add darks and lights, but a less obvious way would also to use analogous colors. So like perhaps instead of black, I would use blue to darken up the purple instead of black. But I'm going to keep this black and white combination because it's higher contrast for you to see on the video. Okay, so first layer is my purple, my main color. I'm just going to make a sphere for the sake of discussion here. And I am going to fill this in with the main color. Notice that I'm not pushing hard. I'm not worrying about whether all the paper is colored. I am simply filling in that color, that purple. Violet. Technically, I know it's violet, but it's hard not to say purple. Purple's what happens in nature, like flowers are purple, birds are purple. All right, and then violet is the color that we make, but I use it interchangeably. Now, my next layer is going to be darks and lights. I'd like to point out that my white is dirty, and I do not want this orange color in here because it's going to muddy up what I'm trying to do. So all I have to do is grab a paper towel and just twist it a little bit in there and clean it off. Ta-da, good as new. So if my light source is coming from here, then this is going to be my brightest part. So I am going to layer on my highlights. There'd be a little reflected light over here. All right, and then I'm gonna layer on my dark. Remember, the shadow would go opposite the light source. Kind of reflect around the edge of that. Okay, so I did my color, I did my darks and lights. Now I come back to my color for my third layer. And this time, I am going right over top of everything. Everything that's purple, everything that's dark and light, because what this will do is blend everything together and create what in color theory, yep, look, there's one of those little crumblies. I'll talk about that in just a minute. See my crumb? All right, we'll get to that in a second. So in color theory, when there's a little bit of the same color all over the place, it's often referred to as color harmony. So you are harmonizing your colors by blending them all together with that main color. In my case, it's purple. All right, so I put this on here. You can see how it's filling in, smoothing out, covering the paper. By the third layer, usually the paper's pretty covered. I do think that my highlight got a little bit lost. Colors especially with red in them, like purple, are pretty powerful. So I'm just gonna add actually a fourth layer here to bring back my highlights. All right, so there's my sphere. Now, back to these crumbs. Here's another one. All right, if I take this and I swipe it off the page, let me see if I can separate these out and I'll show you. So if I take this and I just try to brush it off the paper, it's gonna leave a smudge mark, and actually it's still there. So the best thing to do is to take it to your trash can. I'm gonna use this little cup as a trash can, and take your paper and just tap it, shake it right off into your trash can so that you don't smudge everything around. Now, I didn't worry about that too much because if I was going to add a shadow to this, the shadow would go right where that smudge was anyway. So, and same thing works if you're using one color. You're just going to layer it until it gets solid and looks like you want it to look. Let's talk about some other things you can do to practice how to use oil pastel. And one of them would be to use primary colors, and I'll just do it down here, and layer them on so that red, yellow, and blue, remember those are your primaries, so that red, yellow, and blue in different combinations create a secondary color. So in this case, I am using yellow and blue to make green. So I'm gonna layer this on, let it overlap, keep layering it on until I get the paper covered. All right, so I used yellow and blue to make green. So I practiced mixing those together. You can make tints and shades. So I've grabbed a secondary color, which is an orange, and I'm gonna put a layer of that down. Actually, I'm just gonna make it the same length because I'll do tints and shades on the same one. So tints happen with white, and it's a tint with an I, like it's not an E like you're going camping, it's T-I-N-T. Okay, so tints are with white, color with white. Shades, you know it's darker under a tree in the summer, so shade is with black. And I'm going to layer some of that on here. Then, so that was my second layer. My last layer is to come back with my color and blend it all together. And I created this gradation. All right, and notice that it also, maybe it's kind of hard to see the camera, so I'll make it more pronounced, but I'm trying to make this go from lighter to darker gradually. So maybe you have to come back into it, layer some more pastel into it to get that. So you're trying to control the color and how those combinations work together. Let's come back to this sphere and talk about cleaning it up a little bit. So you can see how the edges are a little bit rough. And the inclination is going to be to take your finger and smear it together. Don't do that. Yeah, you can't control it. It gets on your hand and then you fingerprint all over the place. No finger blending. Should I say that again? No finger blending. Resist the urge to squish this together with your finger, because you can come in And keep working that edge with your oil pastel to blend it together and clean it up. So you can see how that's already smoother. The other thing that you can do is use a Q-tip, which are usually found around a house. And actually, I think this Q-tip, there we go. Okay, so I am going to blend this together with my Q-tip, clean up that edge. All right, another option is like a blending stump. And I like these because they tend to have a nice point on them, so you can really get in and move that oil pastel around to finish the edge. Finish it around here so you can see that. Okay, so now my sphere is looking much cleaner around the edges and have a more finished appearance at the end. So I will do the same thing here with my, and once you get oil pastel onto this blending stump, you can actually work with it a little bit to lay some color down if you want to blend it out just a touch. Okay, so those are some options. Another thing that can be kind of fun if you want to add details is to use a technique called sgraffito. SG, yep, two consonants right next to each other. Sgraffito, and scratch into the surface. Now, you could get some fancy little scrapey tool like this, right? Oh, that's hard to see on this video. Let me hold it up a little closer. All right, so I can scratch into this. And it also works here where you've got the colors layered together. That's hard to see with this. Okay, so fancy scratchy tool, not so hot for you to see on a video. But something even more commonly available, good old toothpicks. I bought these at the local grocery store. It was 59 cents for a box of 250 of them. All right, but you can use that's still not showing up so well. There we go. You can just use this toothpick to scratch away and add some details. Okay, so that's another option for you to try as well. Oil pastels are the sophisticated crayon of your younger days. So have fun, enjoy, and remember, don't smudge it with your fingers.